Hey there, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. So this episode here is going to be a bit of a continuation of the last video that I made. I'm going to use very similar type of examples and everything, but this one is going to be kind of expanding on the original idea and then taking it a slightly different direction. And this is more of an open-ended one. I wanted to kind of discuss it with you, and I'd be happy to get your opinions and thoughts in the comments on this one. So the first time around, the last episode, I was kind of focusing on using this 2022 WWE Prizm as an example of cases where we're looking at some stuff where the comps are a little bit faulty, there's some shenanigans. And I believe that to still be the case because obviously there is plenty of evidence to that effect. However, I do want to point out, that's why I said this is kind of a part two of it. I also want to point out that there is also legitimate sales that, in my opinion, are out of whack with what would make sense. And that part of it is going to be showing that to you. And also kind of, again, I'll look at how I'm coming to the conclusion that I believe them to be legitimate. But at the same time, I do also believe they're out of whack. I don't think they make really rational sense if you really do the very basic bit of research. But what I want to posit to you is kind of my theory for kind of why that's a thing right now is that right now this Prism product is very much a product, I believe, of an audience that is pretty much at this point conditioned. They've been told that Prism is the brand that people need to follow. Obviously, it is the first year of Prism, but obviously, we also know that Fanatics is now going to reclaim the license as soon as Panini loses it, and that puts Panini in kind of this weird bind. I mentioned, some time ago when that initially was announced, that it basically made Panini into a lame duck licensee with the WWE license. But at the same time, obviously, it hasn't really been impactful on the secondary market prices on a lot of these cards. But what I want to do here is I want to contrast the first video with this video where I'm actually going to go into a card that I believe was legitimately bid appropriately, and I'll show you that in a second. But at the same time, I also want to compare it to some alternative options, and I'm even going to show you how even within that same space, there are some opportunities if you are willing and able to do a little bit of research. And again, even if this particular type of thing doesn't interest you, you don't care about wrestling cards, you don't care about Panini product, whatever, it doesn't matter. The principle is still the same whenever there's something that's hot or whenever there's something that there's a narrative built in behind. You got to go a little bit below the surface. You got to do that research. I'm not sure what I'm going to name this episode, but I do believe there really is a contingent of folks that are very naive and really not that knowledgeable. And honestly, it is creating, in addition to the shenanigans, it's also creating a little bit of self-fulfilling prophecy because I believe that some of these sales are legitimate, but I think they are also out of whack with what reality would make sense. So let's use this example here. I'm looking at a gold Kevin Owens from 2022 Panini Prizm WWE. So that is again numbered out of 10, and it shows here $510 with 35 bids. Okay. So last time around in the last episode, I showed you MVP, who's a little bit more of a marginal talent, more of a manager kind of, who used to do a lot more wrestling. Kevin Owens is current wrestler in WWE, and he was actually featured pretty prominently in WrestleMania. I wasn't the biggest fan of this past WrestleMania year. However, he was featured prominently in kind of a street fight with Stone Cold Steve Austin in Texas, which, got a lot of attention, and it was kind of the main event of the night. So that's pretty good for him. He does have a little bit of a background in WWE in the sense that he was a former champion. He's had a couple of runs with different championships. So I would consider him to be a tier above the MVP. So the price point, comparatively to the other one, wouldn't seem out of whack. But as I mentioned, the MVP one, in my opinion, again, you can never be definitive, but in my opinion, the MVP one was shill bid because of the way the bidding history went. Now, let's take a look at this one and see if it follows a similar pattern or if this one falls more in line with what would make sense. Switching over here, I've got the bidding history of this particular card, so I'm going to go down to the bottom, and you can see right away, from the very beginning, we're starting off with a 1,400 feedback bidder, Hunt 295, 183. These are all pretty decent. All these bids here from this 183 are exactly the same, so none of these would actually increase the bid. It would just mean that they would have a higher threshold if somebody wanted to bid over them. But then the next bid above that is a 211 feedback bidder, a 343, the 211, the 343 going back and forth, 198, 3,800. And by the time we get to the end, 3,794. So in my opinion, like if you notice, there's no 1, 2, or 5 or 10 feedback bidders here. All of these folks have at least 100 plus feedback, if not a couple of hundred, a couple of thousand. In my opinion, this particular bidding pattern gives a greater likelihood and no retractions, not seemingly nothing. I am more inclined to believe that this one was a more legitimate set of bids that led to this final result in this final price. Again, it could very well be that it doesn't get paid. Anything's possible, but we're looking at a 3,700, almost 3,800 feedback bidder that won this thing, and the underbidder was 281 feedback. So normally you see these really low feedback bidders are the ones involved if there's some more shenanigans happening. This seems pretty reasonable, all things considered. Although, as I said, if you really do kind of a logical comparison, it does feel to be unjustifiably high. So let's kind of think through this one a little bit. So again, the gold prisms are out of 10. So very similar to last time, I'm going to do a comparison. I don't have a black refractor to compare it to, although I do, but it's going to be a little bit different this time around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a black refractor of Kevin Owens in the Topps Chrome product from the year prior, or from a couple of years prior, and let's kind of do a little side-by-side comparison. So again, $510 is what we were looking at initially here, and now let's do a comparison to a 2020 Topps Chrome Kevin Owens numbered to 10. So here it is. Kevin Owens, shocking wins. This one is an autograph, so it's not exactly apples to apples, but this one was sold for $59.99. Now, I can tell you definitively this one was paid for. The reason I can say that is because I bought it. When I was doing research for this video, I noticed I decided to then do the same kind of exercise that I did the previous time. I looked into it and I saw that this card was available, and I thought, well, that's hilarious. The price point was reasonable. I would love to have, of course, made an offer, but, you know, I decided not to be overly greedy about it. But the point is this. The other card, I believe, to have been legitimately bid based on that bidding history. Again, it is possible I'm wrong, but in the same vein, it's also possible the MVP one was legitimate even with all the low feedback bidders. I'm going to say it's unlikely. I believe the MVP one was shill bid, and I believe the Kevin Owens one is probably okay. Again, we'll never know completely definitively unless we find out that it was either paid or not paid. However, in this instance, we got an out of 10 Prism Kevin Owens card that goes for $510. This one is autographed, also out of 10 from Topps Chrome, and it is $60 with free shipping. So the discrepancy is it's ridiculous if you really think about it. Now, in fairness, if we want to get down to brass tacks here, it's not a fair comparison really, because at the same time, this is an autographed card. It is a sticker auto, but it is an autographed card versus a regular parallel that is not autographed. So what I'm going to do to kind of equalize this a little bit for you is I'm going to grab another auction here for you that is also a Kevin Owens autograph. So now we're going to get back to Prism. This is a Kevin Owens autograph that is also a sticker autograph from Prism. So here you go. Kevin Owens, 2022, Panini Prism, autograph, sticker. This one is from Prism, and it just completed today, basically the day I'm recording. And as you can see, this one was in an auction, 15 bids, and it completed above the price of the other one. This one is not numbered. This is not a parallel. This is the base autograph out of the 2022 Prism product. Okay, so 15 bids. Is there any shield bidding, any issues here? Let's take a look. So I'm going to open it up, same as I did with the other one. 198 feedback, 716, 393. Okay, scrolling through, there's a couple in the 60s here, 261, 261, 111 feedback for the final person. Again, is it possible there's some silliness going on here? Possibly. The pricing of it doesn't seem like totally out of whack. Most of the bidding took place on the 7th, and then a little bit bidding on the last day or so. Pretty much a normal standard kind of bidding pattern for a lot of this stuff. But the end result was we ended up with a $66, sticker autograph here out of Prism, while at the same time, this one completed, but this one right here was available. I literally purchased it only a few hours ago before I'm recording this video. So it was sitting there as if somebody was looking at it. And maybe this is where I kind of also defer back to you guys. I'm very curious what your thoughts would be. Even if you're not in the space, just humor me for the sake of this conversation. If you're looking for something like this, and you've got this right here, a numbered one, to 10 in this example, and you've got it available for 60 as a buy it now, and then you've got a chance to try to win a bid for the same person in this case, autograph, sticker auto, the whole 9 yards, it's sticker right there, and you are trying to win it, and it goes right around $60 at that point, and you're trying to win it, and you actually have to go to $66 to win. How does it make any sense then for the buy it now to sit there? So the only situation that you can come to that makes any sense here is that maybe you believe the Prism brand to be a higher level brand than Topps Chrome. And that's fine. If that's really your argument and that's your belief, fair enough. But I find it difficult to believe that the discrepancy would be that high, because in this case, you've got a very low numbered version of this versus one that is unnumbered. And I think they're basically about 1 per box or 2 per box. So it's kind of a weird combination of things where you've got this strange discrepancy between these two. And right now, I can't justify it simply by using the brand names. Even if you believe, again, that the Prism brand to be a higher level brand than the Topps Chrome brand, well, the Topps Chrome brand is probably going to come back in a couple of years. Again, it is the first inaugural Prism set, But I'm using the same character in this case. I'm not changing the individual. I'm sticking apples to apples as close as is possible with two different brands here. So it's one of those things where I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are on that. Now, since we were talking about this, I'll kind of finish off with this thought. My thought is that in the cases where there is a legitimate set of bidders, and we assume that these things are being completed properly and actually sold, some of the higher end stuff we know is definitely being shilled, or at least we're pretty confident in it. I do believe that there is an element of folks that don't have that knowledge base. They're kind of going with the flow as far as different people's evaluations of the brand. It is assumed for them that Prism is really great and therefore worth the super premium. The boxes are going for high dollar amounts on the secondary market. So as such, I think people are kind of translating that into meaning that Prism is much higher. For comparison's sake, the Chrome brand, you can still get hobby boxes of Chrome for a fraction of the price of what the Prism is going for. Again, I leave it to you to decide which one of these brands, if you feel the discrepancy is multiples. Because I can say that the Prism brand, the first off the line ones were going for $1,100 US, and you can still get a box of Prism, again, taking the translation, you deducted it for US dollars. For about $300 Canadian, I can buy a hobby box of Topps Chrome right now for 2021. So I guess it really depends on how much more you like the Prism brand if you're going to pay between 3 and 4 times as much, maybe even close to 5 times as much for, to me, what two brands that are a little bit closer than that. Again, even if you feel the Prism's a little bit higher, I don't think the discrepancy is quite to 4 or 5 times. But according to these prices, it is. Or in the case of the autograph, you can get the out of 10 for less than the price that you can with the one per box style autograph in this case. So a little bit of an interesting bit as far as the outcomes when you do a little bit of analysis. Now, overall, I do believe, like I said, that a lot of this really comes down to, outside of the shenanigans part, I do believe a lot of it comes down to all those individuals who don't have that education. And the truth is, they're not watching YouTube videos, they're not watching podcasts, or if they do, very minimal amount, they're pretty much just taking everything at face value and just kind of accepting it for what it is. And I believe there's a lot more of those people than people want to let on. I believe that to be at least a factor in a lot of these markets. And that is the reason why I believe that a lot of the things that, collectors get frustrated about that seems illogical, I think that plays into it a little bit. Obviously, the shenanigans piece does play into it as well. But like I said, even in a case where I think the result probably was real and probably is being paid as such, the gap between the two things isn't really justifiable if you compare the two beside each other. And a little bit of research, if you wanted a Kevin Owens card, a nice quality Kevin Owens card, there were options available on eBay at the exact same time as Buy It Nows. And that's where I think some of these folks not having that understanding is potentially costing them a lot more money than would have had to have been. But there are enough other people that are willing to go there with them. You don't get to this 510 if there aren't 35 bids. So one way or another, we got there. And in this case, I think it probably was more legitimate. There are some other ones on here that would be kind of interesting to look at. And I'm going to do my research and some digging. I'm not going to make more videos on this unless it's warranted. Again, you got something like this Braun Breaker one here. That kind of an interesting one. I'd be curious to see if that one got paid for. And Undertaker, $9,800. That's probably one I'm definitely going to look into. Anyway, I'm not going to spend too many more videos at the moment unless there's something crazy that warrants it. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. Do you think that there is an aspect of this that is involved with a lot of folks that are just kind of getting swept up in the wave, just going with it, and just accepting that at face value that, well, Prism's worth multiples of what the Topps Chrome variant is? And to be clear, again, even if you're not into the wrestling side of things, this can apply to other sports and other situations. This can apply to sports. This can apply to non-sports. It doesn't really make a difference. If the hype is there and people are just willing to roll with it and without questioning it, then you're going to get results like this anyway, whether that don't necessarily have to make any sense, even if you've got a good comparable right beside it. If you're more savvy, then it provides a bit of an opportunity for you to take advantage of it and be on the opposite side of this equation instead of being on this side of the equation. Anyway, so that's it for me for now. I'm going to leave it at that. I may make one more video early next week with the pickup that I did and if I've got anything else that I want to add. Other than that, though, I think I'm done on this piece for now. I'd be curious to get what your thoughts are in the comments section. Like if you like the video, subscribe if you haven't to the channel. There will be more videos coming up on the channel about different things, but other things that are related to the hobby, as well as live streams on Fridays at 9 p.m. where we talk about whatever happens to be going in the hobby happenings and any other topics that catch our interest. That's it for now. Thanks very much. We'll catch you in the next one.